Hey everybody, thanks for checking out the podcast. Today on Drinks with Johnny, I have a chat with famed former drummer of Dream Theater, Mr. Mike Portnoy. We talked about everything from his childhood growing up in Long Island to going to School of Music in Berkeley and Boston, his run with us in Avenged Sevenfold, and much, much more. So without further ado, I bring you Mr. Mike Portnoy. Hey, what's up everybody? I am Johnny Christ and you are listening to Drinks with Johnny. I have a very special episode here for you today because via Skype, my very first Skype guest, Mr. Mike fucking Portnoy. How you doing today, man?
Yeah.
All the way from Pennsylvania. How's the weather out there?
It's fucking beautiful, actually. It's a beautiful day. It's as soon as we get off the phone, I'm gonna head out there and take my dog for a walk, and yeah, it's beautiful.
Awesome. Yeah, early in the morning here, so I got a cup of coffee today. What are you drinking over there?
Yeah, I'm drinking my coffee, man. I'm just waking up over here, so I'm like having my Starbucks and
Got Starbucks in the cup? I got my Nespresso, whatever, fucking Caramelizito or whatever.
Fancy.
Yeah, I'm a fancy guy. I got my shit.
Well, at least I'm drinking Starbucks. Here in Pennsylvania, everybody drinks Dunkin' Donuts. Like, fuck that shit. Oh,
really? That's not the case over here. I think there's like one Dunkin' Donuts out here.
Yeah, it's definitely an East
Starbucks.
Coast.
Yeah, fucking weird.
Yeah.
So, anyways, let's get into it, man. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad I could break your Skype virginity, man.
I know. I had to get this all set up this morning. I never fucking had this shit all set up this way. This is the first time, so I'm like, all right, let's go for it.
Well, now the world is your oyster. You could interview anybody at any time, man.
I know, right? It's gonna open up all these worlds. I still won't probably do it, but I could.
Well, I still want to come to your place and hang at the bar and just have a good time. So
yeah, we'll definitely do that again.
Yeah, I feel bad that I can't be there with you, but at least we're doing it this way. It's all good.
Yeah, it's all good. We're still getting to see each other. I can still see your face. It's like you're here.
Yeah, totally.
So, man, I wanted to just start out, and get to know everything about Mike Portnoy. I mean, we were on the road together and everything like that. So I feel like I know a fair amount of this of these questions I'm going to be asking you. But right. Let's start out with growing up in Long Island. What was that like for you? Your childhood, your family, when you first fell in love with the drums, that kind of shit. What can you tell me about all that?
Well, I was born 4/20, 1967, so I'm a 420 boy.
Wait a minute. Okay, so that's why you have Mike Portnoy 420 on your thing.
Yeah, it's my drumsticks are 420. Everything yeah, and everyone thinks I'm a stoner, but that's my birthday. I was born April 20th.
I was like, what the fuck? I know you don't smoke weed. What the fuck is this?
Yeah, me and Adolf Hitler, we're both 420 boys. He was born on April 20th too, yeah.
In good company?
Yeah, all the best kids were born on April 20th, man. It's awesome.
Shit, man.
But, yeah, so I was born 67, so I came out the summer of love, pretty much, and Long Island, New York, man, it was good time, I grew up with all the typical late 60s, early 70s stuff, watching Saturday morning cartoons and H.R. Puff and stuff, and all the, grew up listening to the Beatles and the Who and Zeppelin and the Stones, all that late 60s stuff, and eventually just migrated towards music. I guess my dad was a disc jockey on the radio in the early 70s, and he introduced me to all that music, all that classic rock stuff. So I was immediately surrounded by it. So I knew I would eventually become a musician, and I started playing piano. But it just
so you started with the piano. You didn't go straight to the drums.
Yeah, I was on piano, but it just wasn't rock and roll enough for me. I needed to hit things. I just had energy, and I was always hyper. So I ended eventually getting a drum kit, and
What was your first drum kit? Do you remember?
It was just a little Mickey Mouse kit, just a silly Mickey Mouse, play kit, toy kit or whatever. And then I didn't get my first real drum kit till I was about 10 or 11. I went and visited, I was visiting family down in Florida, and they had a real drum kit in the garage. And the whole time I was visiting them, they couldn't peel me off the drum kit. So At that point, my family knew they wanted to get me a real kit. And for my 11th birthday, I got my first real drum set, and it's weird, man, because my grandfather was the one that bought it for me, and he actually had a heart attack that day and ended up passing away from it. So that was kind of his parting gift to me. It was
Whoa,
really
shit. Well, then you had to. You had no choice at that point.
It was crazy timing. Yeah. So at that point I was committed. I had to fulfill his legacy. So yeah. And at that point it was, mid to late 70s, and I was listening to a lot of Kiss and stuff like that. Kiss, and later on came like the Ramones and the Sex Pistols and stuff like that. So I kind of grew up, the first 10 years of my life playing classic rock and punk rock and, early heavy metal stuff like Kiss and Sabbath and all that kind of stuff. I didn't really discover the progressive stuff till later, and I got more serious as a mid-teen.
Okay, that makes sense. But
yeah.
I mean, okay, so you touched upon a little bit of your dad, Howard Portnoy, being a DJ, right?
Yeah.
So you grew up and you already had a celebrity in the house, right?
Yeah, he was a crazy guy that did so many different things through his life. He made a movie, he wrote a book, he was a DJ for a few years.
Wow.
When I was born, he was making a movie. He was hanging around in the New York scene with like Martin Scorsese and Brian De Palma, Robert De Niro. They were all starting out too. Like Scorsese and De Palma were making their first films, and my dad was friends with them, and he was making his first film. Obviously, they went on to be, fucking legends, and my dad's film never got released, so he just went from gig to gig to gig.
Yeah.
And
But you remember what the movie was about? I'm curious. What was that movie about?
It was a movie called Felicia, and it was just like a trippy art film. Like, it wasn't until I was in my 20s and smoking pot and stuff, and that I was able to even watch it and appreciate it. But it was a really trippy film that never got released. But
that's awesome.
But here's the craziest thing: how my dad became a disc jockey. Him and my mom got divorced when I was a kid, so he wanted to leave New York, and he saw the movie Play Misty for Me with Clint Eastwood. I don't know if you ever saw it, but it was a movie that came around 71. It's a movie about a disc jockey on a radio station in Carmel, California, disc jockeying at this station called KRML, and this chick becomes obsessed with him. It's kind of like a Fatal Attraction kind of story. This chick gets obsessed with him and ends up like trying to kill him. But anyway, my dad saw the movie and fell in love with the looks and the scenery of Carmel, California, and was like, man, that looks like a great gig, being a disc jockey at KRML Radio in Carmel. So my dad literally left New York, drove to Carmel, and got a gig at that radio station, like literally doing exactly what Clint Eastwood was doing in the movie.
That's fucking hilarious. That actually brings me. So you followed him out to California, though, right?
No, I stayed in New York with my mom and her new husband, and I would basically just see my dad like a couple times a year. I'd go out for the summer and stuff, and then I would actually go and do the radio show with him. Like, he would do the morning show, and he'd let me go and pick the tunes and stuff, and even talk on the radio station with him. Like, my first taste of fame was when I was around 5-6 years old. From doing the radio show with him, I called up the operator to place a collect call, and I was like, collect call from Mike, and the operator was like, "Are you Mike Portnoy?" I was like a little 5-year-old kid, but she knew me from the radio show. So
I never realized you were a childhood star. It explains a lot, Mike. It explains a lot.
Yeah. So, and my dad would let me pick weird shit. He'd let me take over, and I'd be playing like Cheech and Chong records and shit like that. Like,
oh, dude,
on the morning show.
I actually have some of those records, believe it or not.
Oh, totally, man. That shit was great.
Speaking of collections and records, dude, I'm looking at all this shit in the back. I've actually been to your house, so I've seen all this before. But a lot of people at home don't know that you got quite the collection around your drum kit there. I mean, look at all those fucking albums you got over there.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, you were here, I guess 10 years ago or so, 9-10 years ago.
Yeah.
It was pretty crazy then, but it just keeps growing and growing. I don't know if I had that drum room.
No, you did not have that drum room back there the last time I was there. That is fucking nice, man.
I literally have 5 kits in that drum room, and actually I have my Avenged kit from the European tour we did. That kit is in there, and it's mic'd up, and I actually use that to record on sometimes.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so the two Metal Allegiance albums were recorded right there on that kit with the Death Bats on them.
Fucking A.
Yeah.
Honor.
Yeah. So some history on that kit for sure.
That's fucking cool, man. Yeah. So one of the, I'm gonna pull away here from our conversation here. I'm gonna go a little sideways here for a second. But one of the first times we were hanging out and we were over at your house in PA, that's when I learned that you are pretty much an encyclopedia of fucking music.
Yeah.
You cannot stump this guy. Like, you could bring up any fucking random fucking B track on any record and he knows it. It's fucking incredible.
It's because of I grew up with it. Like I said, like my dad, like literally from day one, I was literally spinning Beatles records when I was like 2 months old and collecting. And by the time I was like 5, 6 years old, I had like hundreds of records, and I just became an obsessive kind of guy, you know, just obsessing over all that shit. So yeah.
That's
It's
always been crazy.
It's movies too. Like you've been in my theater and stuff like that. Thousands of Blu-rays and shit like that. So yeah,
we've only been talking for about 5 minutes. You already mentioned a movie that I never fucking heard of. So we can go from there. Oh man! All right. So there's another thing that you mentioned you were living with your mom and stuff, and there's no easy way to segue into this, but she was taken from you early on, right?
Yeah. She was. Well, she raised me and my. After I was born, she had my brother and my sister with her second husband, and she raised the three of us. And when I was 17, she got into a freak plane crash. Completely, you know, it was just completely devastating and shocking. And I was 17, and my brother and my sister are a few years younger than me, so it was devastating. We were basically. Well, there's a crazy story. I guess I'll tell you the story if you want a minute.
Yeah, divulge, man. Let's get into it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a crazy coincidence. That afternoon before the accident in school, my health teacher was giving a class about Carpe Diem and like seize the day. And well, actually, shit, you know about it because you guys got that song as well.
Yeah,
exactly. But I ended up writing a song with Carpe Diem as well as a result of this. But the teacher was giving this class about how to appreciate life, and you never know what might happen. Life changes at the drop of a dime, and appreciate the people you have in your life. You know, you never know when they're going to be gone. So he gives this like totally heavy like lesson in class that day. And I go home that night, and my mom's getting ready to go to Atlantic City on a private plane with her boyfriend. It was just a private plane with 4 people. And she was getting ready to go to the airport. I was going out with my friends, and I was just about to run out. And then I turned around, and I remembered this lesson. I turned around and went back to my mom and gave her a big hug and a kiss and said, I just want you to know I love you. And she was like, wow, what the hell is that? Where'd that come from?
Whoa.
You know, I've never done something like that. But it was because of that lesson, the Carpe Diem lesson I got that day, that I had this final goodbye with my mom. And I left, went out with my friends. She gets on the plane, and the plane crashed right off the shore of Atlantic City, and you know, never saw her again. But I had that moment, and that changed life.
I guess silver lining there, I guess, of some sort. You know, you were able to say goodbye.
I tattooed Carpe Diem on my arm, and I wrote the song "A Change of Seasons" with Dream Theater, which told that whole story. And yeah, it was quite a heavy thing for a 17-year-old kid to adjust to. You know, losing your mom so unexpectedly like that. But
it's such an early age too. I mean, that's. I mean. Everyone's dealt with some loss, but like, I mean, you were only 17 though, you know, and like,
yeah.
I mean,
well, it you know, between that and going through all the divorces and stuff before that, you know, both my mom getting remarried and my dad getting remarried, so I pretty much grew up pretty quickly. I had to learn about life pretty early on, you know.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, let's get back to a little bit of Mike Portnoy early on. You were actually in a couple of bands before Dream Theater. Is that correct?
Yeah, you know, just typical high school shit. My first band was called Intruder, and it was typical, you know, when you're in junior high school and 15, 16 years old, you start playing your instrument, you want to jam with other guys. So
yeah, like garage band kind of shit, right?
Exactly. We would play like the local church and stuff like that. And we were doing like Van Halen covers and Motley Crue and Ozzy.
Van Halen in the church. I love it.
Yeah.
Getting hot for teaching.
In the church. We were playing, you know, like Mr. Crowley and stuff like that at St. Mary's Church. It was awesome.
That's fucking rad.
Yeah. So, I mean, I cut my teeth on that, like doing learning covers and stuff like that and having fun. And then I formed my first band of originals, this band Rising Power, and you could still find that stuff on YouTube. We did some demos and stuff, and it's out there.
Oh, we definitely got to check that out. That's fucking
awesome.
Awesome.
Rising Power, and then Inner Sanctum was my first metal band. Inner Sanctum was more like in the vein of like Motorhead and early Sabbath and early Priest and Maiden and stuff like that, because it was cool. Yeah, it was early 80s. The thrash scene was just coming around, so I started getting into that. The thing was, I had like this crazy taste of all different styles, man. I loved everything from punk to classic rock to thrash metal. And then I graduated high school and went off to Berkeley. And I also was a big prog fan. I was a big fan of like Rush. Like Neil Peart was like my fucking hero. And I wanted to learn about like playing giant drum kits and odd time signatures. So when I went off to Berkeley, I met John Petrucci and John Mayung, and we put together the band that became Dream Theater. But, you know, that whole progressive direction was only just one style of what I liked. I could have went off to Berkeley and met some guys that were Sex Pistols fans or Ramones fans, and could have just as easily gone in that direction, or guys that were into playing like Cream and Hendrix and the Doors, and I could have went in that direction. I just loved so many different kinds of music that
we have that in common. Actually, we both have a very eclectic taste.
That's the key to like music is that's variety is the spice of music, man.
Absolutely.
And I'm still like that to this day. I mean, now post Dream Theater, I have all these different fucking bands going in a million different directions because they're all a part of me. Like I kind of got known for being the prog guy because of Dream Theater, but that was always just like one side of me.
Totally. Well, let's get into that one side though. You kind of grazed over it a little bit here. You went off to Berklee School of Music in Boston, and that's where you met John and John.
Right?
Yeah. And what were your first impressions? Like, how did you guys meet when we're like, I mean, obviously you're at the school, but like, what was that first encounter like? Or do you have any memories of like what these guys were at that age? You know,
I remember the specific day we met, and we got lucky because we met real quick. We met, I think, maybe the second week of school, like September '85, and that's when Little Johnny Christ was about a year. Oh, dude!
No. I was November '84. So
yes, I know that. And actually, the story I just told about my mom dying in a plane crash, that was the day before you were born. If I remember, your birthday's November 17th or 18th.
18th.
84. My mom died November 16th, 84. So that whole story I told was literally the weekend you were born, actually.
That is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I just remembered that's when you were born.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a mind fuck right there.
Yeah, totally. It was that weekend when you came crawling out, man.
Yeah.
I was dealing with that.
Jesus.
But anyway, so back to Berkeley. I met those guys like real quick. It was like the second week of school, and the two of those guys went to Berkeley together. They lived in Kings Park, Long Island. I lived in Long Beach, Long Island, which is about a half hour south of where they grew up. And
you guys never had any, a half hour of separation. You never had any interactions before?
No. Long Island is huge, man. Long Island is just people from everywhere. And the same with Berkeley. Like people from all over the world at Berkeley. So for three guys to like all be from Long Island and connect and be into the same music was pretty amazing. But I remember I was wearing a Talus T-shirt. That's Billy Sheehan's old band back then, before he joined the David Lee Roth band.
Yeah, okay.
So I was wearing a Talus shirt, and I was in one of the practice rooms drumming, and they could tell that I was like into like heavy stuff, and I was jamming on like Maiden tunes and Rush tunes. And they came up to me and they're like, "Man, you've heard of Talus? You know who Billy Sheehan is?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then we started talking. And it's funny that it was Billy Sheehan and Talus that brought us together. And now I'm in two other bands with Billy.
Yeah, with
now,
Billy Sheehan,
all these years later, which is really funny. But we immediately started talking, and we had common influences. They were huge Rush fans. They were huge Maiden fans. And we just started jamming, and we were like total outcasts back then, because back then at Berkeley, it was nothing but jazz heads. And we were like the only kids that were like listening to that kind of stuff, Priest and Maiden and Metallica. And yes, we started jamming 6 hours a day, every single day, and just getting to know each other, and started writing original music. And that was pretty much the origins of Dream Theater.
That's super cool, man. So then, you guys formed Dream Theater there. How soon after, when you first meet in '85, are you guys, cutting a record and doing all this? Or do you guys just leave Berkeley? You're like, fuck it, we got what we need.
Exactly. That's the thing from Berkeley. If you graduate Berkeley, you become a school teacher, a music teacher. If you drop out,
you're only there to meet other musicians, right?
Yeah, you go there to meet musicians, drop out, and become a rock star. So it was like mission accomplished.
Yeah.
But the hard thing was like we all had to really convince our parents to let us go to Berkeley. Like I remember my mom, before she passed away, she wanted me to go to a normal school and get a college degree, and so I could have something to fall back on. And if she hadn't died in that plane crash and she had lived, I may not have gone to Berkeley. I don't know. So
what would you have been? How did you ever think about what you would have been if you weren't a fucking rock star?
I mean, all of our lives would be so completely different. Not only mine, but John Petrucci and John Mayung's and my wife's, and it was all a path that led us to become who we became.
Yeah.
And if
the
my mom had lived and I hadn't gone to Berkeley, I mean, all of our lives would be totally different. It's crazy. But anyway, so I finally had to convince them, I want to go to music school. I want to go to music school. So I finally go to Berkeley. And then after a year there, then we have to come back to our families and say, well, now we're dropping out. We just want to form a band and just play.
They were thrilled, obviously.
Oh, yeah. It was tough for our families to accept. And when you think about it, it fucking took balls on our behalf, after just a year of just meeting some guys at college and jamming. You wanted to just drop out and pursue a career. So it took balls, but it showed how dedicated and devoted we were. We really believed in ourselves. We knew that there was some really special talent there, and we believed in ourselves. So
I'm personally happy that you did, because I got to listen to some pretty fucking kick-ass music over the years.
Yeah, well, it all worked out, but it took time because we didn't get our first record deal till 88, 89. And we didn't really.
Were you doing shows before that, or
we were just playing the Long Island scene and doing demos on my little 4-track recorder? Just doing.
God, I love those 4-track recorders, man.
Yeah, well, all the early recorders, all the early Dream Theater demos were all done on my little 4-track that I got for a high school graduation present.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, and we got signed off of that. Actually, I became friends with the guys in a band called the Crumbsuckers. They were a New York hardcore band back in the late 80s.
Crumbsuckers? That's not one I'm familiar with.
Oh, dude, you got to check them out.
I'm going to after we get off this session here.
The New York hardcore scene at that point was made up of the Cro-Mags, Agnostic Front, Ludachrist, Leeway, and the Crumbsuckers. And I was friends with a lot of the
only one that I know out of all those that you just mentioned was Agnostic Front.
Well, the Cro-Mags? Cro-Mags were classic, too.
I'm sure they were. I'm not the encyclopedia you are, man.
Yeah. Well, I became friends with the Crumbsuckers, and they were signed to Combat Records, which was the same label that Megadeth was on at the time.
Okay.
And just from our friendship and those guys, hearing the shit that I was doing, they were they brought our demos to the label, and from there we got our first deal, but that wasn't until 88, 89, and even that first record we made went nowhere. We made an album called When Dreaming Day Unite that came and went. We had a different singer. So it wasn't until our second album, Images and Words, that we actually broke, and at that point we were already 7 years into being together. So those 7 years were, we were just grinding
it out, right?
Grinding it out, and people thought that we were this overnight success with Images and Words, but at that point it was already 7 years of just being in the basement and writing all those tunes and just persevering and just being patient and patient and patient. So it took a while before we got to that point.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. I didn't actually realize that, because I obviously first time I heard anything was from Images and Words. You guys had a music video out, and that I remember seeing on MTV back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah, that was crazy. It was crazy that a band like ours got any MTV play, though, because we were writing these long songs.
Oh, I know.
And that was in the era of grunge. When Images and Words came out, that was when it was all about Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains.
3 minutes bangers, yeah.
Totally. And we were the total outcasts. Even bands like Queensryche and Maiden and Metallica were getting away from the longer songs, and they were even getting more streamlined. So we were coming out with these 10-minute songs with all this shredding playing and odd time signatures, and it was probably, so shocking that we got any attention, but I think maybe we got attention because we were the only band doing something different. So I think maybe it helped us. It hurt us in a lot of ways, but it helped us in some ways too, just because we stood out.
Yeah, it's funny. That was the video. I'm drawing a blank now. Was it for Overture? Is that what it was?
No, it was probably Pull Me Under.
Pull Me Under. That's what it was. It was definitely Pull Me Under. Yeah.
that was all over MTV, and it's like, what the fuck? It was like a cheesy little $500 video, done for nothing.
I gotta say, everyone should go back and check out this video to see what Mike Portnoy used to look like. It is fucking epic.
I look like my son Max, actually. Like,
that's true, actually. Yeah, you do.
No beard, long black curly hair, playing without a shirt, playing shirtless and stuff.
Everyone was looking gorgeous. I'll say that. It was coming right out of that glam rock, going into the grunge. It was gorgeous.
Oh, it was horrible. The 90s was so bad, actually. I look back, and it got worse and worse. By mid to late 90s, it was the worst. Yeah. You guys came around like perfectly at the tail of that, so you didn't have to be part of that horrible era.
No, we just threw on makeup and wore all black right away.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, totally.
Oh man, so you touched. Let's get off of Dream Theater just for a second here. You brought up your son Max, following in your footsteps, doing the whole thing. He's out touring right now.
Yeah,
he's a kick-ass drummer. I've listened to a lot of the shit, and dude, he's fucking killing it.
He's sick, man. He's doing.
Do you guys have drum offs? Is he better than you now? Is that what's going on?
He is.
That's fucking awesome. And you want that. You want that.
Totally. He won his first Modern Drummer Award last year. He won Best Up and Coming Drummer.
Oh, that's fucking cool.
Exactly 25 years after I won it in Modern Drummer. So,
wow.
Yeah, I'm so proud of him. And then he could outplay me because he's got all the speed and the dexterity of all the crazy shit that kids are doing now. You know, he does all the blast beats and all that crap. I can't do that shit, man. And he's killing it. He's got his band game. Totally, yeah. But I'm hoping I could retire soon. He could just join all my bands and take over from me.
Oh, that seems doable. Yeah.
But he's got his band Tala. They just signed with Earache, and they're about to record their debut album. They have an EP that's out, and they're just sick. But he's into the like hardcore new metal shit, which is cool because he was in a band called Next to None when he was first starting out, which was kind of Dream Theater-ish, and he was just always being compared to me, and you know, like I think after a while he was like, fuck this, I want to do my own thing, and he's really into the hardcore stuff like Code Orange and Knocked Loose and bands like that. So
that's
Slipknot,
awesome that he found his niche too. That's a cool thing,
and he's doing his thing. So there's definitely no way you could compare what he's doing and what I do. They're very, very different worlds, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's super cool. I'm glad that he's doing his own thing and having success there. How is Melody doing?
She's doing great. She's living in New York City. Actually, she lives with John Petrucci's daughter. The two of them have an apartment together in Brooklyn.
No way. That's hilarious.
Yeah, so they stayed friends. They grew up together on our tour buses, and they're still living together now. And she's into music theater. She graduated from New York Film Academy, so she's doing like, you know, music theater and Broadway shows and singing and dancing and that kind of stuff. So yeah, both of them are doing so good. I'm so proud of them. I mean, you knew them when they were when I was playing with you guys, they were kids, and now they're in their 20s and out off and, you know, touring and living in New York. And
yeah, I want to say Melody was just getting into high school at the time. Like I'm pretty sure she was in junior high at the time.
Yeah, totally. It's nuts.
That's wild. That's wild. So anyway, back to Dream Theater and back to your drumming. You've won like how many of those fucking Modern Drummer
30
awards? Jesus Christ, 30.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's actually like, to be honest, yeah, I mean, I love it. It's flattering and everything. It's a nice little fucking visual coming down the stairs. You know, all lined up there. But to be honest,
so you have them lined up over the stairs. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
But you know, in another way, it's kind of like an albatross hanging around my neck. It kind of became like this expectation of me. Like, okay, you know, I would roll into these drum shows or meet other drummers, and they'd be like, oh, okay, here's the fucking Modern Drummer King, 30 awards, blah blah blah. Like, you know, show us something, like impress us, improve, you know. And after a while, I became like almost embarrassed by it. Like I don't, I never set out to be this fucking award-winning drummer. I was just this fucking kid playing Kiss tunes and Ramones tunes, and somehow I got some attention and some acclaim from it. But really, I never wanted it to be about being this well-known drummer. I kind of was just a music fan, and it's nice. It's great that I won all those awards and everything. But at the same time, like, I don't want that to be the focus of what I do. What I do is I just like making music. I just like jamming with other people and having fun. And doing all those kinds of things, touring with you guys and touring with Twisted Sister and all these other bands I've played with through the years. Like, that's what it's about for me. It's about just having these experiences and making music with other people. The awards are nice, but it's not like, I don't know, like I'm not going to go out there and win any fucking drum offs. It's just not my thing,
Well, yeah, Max is already kicking your ass at those. So.
Exactly.
Oh, man. So speaking of, I know you don't want to go too much into these, obviously, because you just said it's not what you're all about. But you mentioned, obviously, you were a big Rush fan. And Neil Peart had previously been the youngest to win a Modern Drummer thing. And then you came in. Were you the second youngest, or did you beat him and become the youngest to earn that award? That
was for entering the Modern Drummer Hall of Fame.
Oh, it's for That's right.
Yeah. That's not like a specific award you get. That's like an induction, and you're in there forever. And Neil was one of the first people to be inducted when they started doing that in the 70s. It was guys like Keith Moon, John Bonham, Ringo Starr, Ginger Baker, all the legends of that era. And then Neil got inducted real early on. I think Neil was 37 when he was inducted.
Okay.
And then I got inducted in 2004, so I think I was like maybe a little older. I might have been 38 or something at that time.
Okay.
So I was the second youngest to be inducted, and up until last year, I'm the youngest guy in there. But Dave Grohl just got in last year, and Dave's a few years younger than me. So Dave's now the youngest guy in there.
Oh,
but up until a few years ago, I was the youngest guy, and I'm in there with all the legends like Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa, John Bonham, Keith Moon, and then little old me. So, that's quite an honor to be like amongst those guys, those legends.
So, speaking of being surrounded by other legends, you don't hang your hat on those awards, but you're an incredible drummer. That's just the way it is, and you guys had an up and down career throughout Dream Theater, right? And you're one of the founders of it and one of the main writers, right? When you guys are writing, what was that process like in Dream Theater with when it came to writing? What was the dynamic like between the guys, and when did you guys get together and start doing? Well, you already covered that, but I mean,
I think right out of the gates, everybody kind of knew their personalities. And out of those guys, I was always like the most outgoing one. I was always the most vocal one. So I think it became inevitable that I kind of became the quote-unquote de facto leader in the band. And I became like the spokesman that did most of the interviews and made all the connections with the different people in different bands and stuff like that. It's just the nature of my personality and the nature of those guys' personality being quieter, kind of more introverted people. But I guess that kind of established the balance of the writing process. I mean, usually the writing in Dream Theater was myself and John Petrucci being very, very much the driving force. With Dream Theater, with me, it wasn't like a traditional drum and bass rhythm section. To me, it was more of a classic drum and guitar rhythm section, like the way like James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich have in Metallica, or the way that like Dimebag and Vinnie Paul had in Pantera. It was definitely drum and guitar driven with Dream Theater. So me and John kind of became the drivers, and as time went on, we became the producers. We took on the reins and produced all the albums, the two of us. And, for my 25 years there, we wrote together. I was always one of the co-music writers, but also I wrote a lot of the lyrics in the band. And anytime I wrote lyrics, I wrote the vocal melodies and did a lot of singing in the band as well, and co-producing the albums. And I guess I just, by nature of my personality, took on a lot of the responsibilities and stuff like that in the band, kind of like the way Lars does with Metallica. Lars was always like a role model for me, the way that he would deal with all the fan club stuff and the merch and, all the special shows and special things like that they would always do. So I think that was just, kind of my nature for all that time.
Yeah. And speaking of those dynamics and everything like that, ultimately we all know now that it came to a head and you guys parted ways. And that will actually take us into when you joined us and helped us out on the Nightmare album and Cycle. I just get into that real quickly. I want to say that this was not the first time that you had filled in for a drummer that had passed away, right? Because you jumped in with Twisted Sister.
Well, Twisted came after you guys. So I had when I started.
So ours was the first, and then you did
Yours
that.
was the first one with somebody that had passed. I mean, I had filled in with other bands. I'd filled in with like Fate's Warning and Overkill and a few different bands through the years. I had done fill-in work, but your situation with you guys was the first time I was stepping into a situation with somebody that had passed. And, you know, as you know, and you guys have all spoken about so much through the years, I mean, it was a heavy situation to walk into. I really was feeling for you guys. I think I got the call from Larry, I think, a few days after the funeral. And I know you guys at that point had decided you were going to go ahead and make the record. And then I came in there. We were in the studio together, I don't know, a few weeks later at that point. So obviously the wounds and the emotions for you guys were obviously very, very fresh. And I came in like really respecting that and, you know, walking on eggshells to make sure, A, that you guys were emotionally cool, but also B, musically, you know, I didn't want to impose myself on what you guys were doing. Obviously, that record was all about honoring Jimmy, and I wanted to make sure that I honored that. And I came in there and told you guys, like, mold me like I'm your clay. I'll play exactly what Jimmy did on the demos, or if you want me to do my thing, just say the word, but like whatever you want. I was there to serve you guys.
Yeah, and that was what was so cool about it. I remember very first meeting you was just outside the NAMM show at a dinner. And my first impressions were obviously like, okay, this guy is awesome. He's willing to do whatever for us and everything. And that's just so cool because we grew up listening to your drumming over the years for so long. And to meet someone and have them be that respectful and not like, you know, if I do this, I'm going to do it my way kind of thing, you know. No. You're very respectful. And that was super cool. We were really, really, really stoked to have you come in and help us out with that. And like you said, you were very open about the fact that you do whatever Jimmy played on the demo, if that's what we wanted and whatever we wanted. And then you mentioned that, you said mold me to what you guys want. And I think we pretty much did because I think we berated you pretty hard a couple of times in the studio. I remember us being in the control room and I think one of your lines was, oh, you want me to sneeze on 2 and fart on 3 or what?
I had never been produced like that before because honestly with Dream Theater, I was self-produced, and I was always, like, nobody was ever allowed to say anything about my drumming in Dream Theater. Like, I did what I wanted, and that was it. But with you guys, it was a much different situation, and I really wanted to respect what you were going through. I think perhaps maybe if Jimmy hadn't passed away, and if, like, maybe it was just like I was coming in and I was replacing somebody, then maybe I wouldn't have been that open about it. I might have been a little bit more territorial, but being that it was such an emotional situation, I was totally willing to do whatever you wanted. If you wanted me to play less, I'd play less. If you wanted me to play more, I'd play more. And I remember you guys like literally really like, no, the kick pattern is da 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 da, and and I would be going da ba 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 ba, and I would literally have to sit there and do exactly what you guys wanted because it was what Jimmy had done on those demos.
Yeah, because the album was done. I mean, that's the reason why at first we didn't even know if we were going to continue as a band, and then the next step was, okay, we need to get this last piece of music of Jimmy's out. Like he a huge component of the writing process of that. Some of the songs were all him. And we're like, okay, we need it. We owe it to Jimmy to get this out. Who are we going to get to play the drums though? We can't use the demos because they were played on an electric kit. We need to do it justice. So we reached out to you, and that's when, we thought about it, and we're like, who could possibly do this? What kind of drummer out there has the chops that could pull off what we were going for? And your name came up in it, and we all kind of went, yeah, let's see if he'd be down to do it because. I'll bring you to a funny story. Like back in the van days, we were listening to Train of Thought, and I remember "Honor Thy Father" starts out with that crazy drum fill, like right off the bat. And I remember all of us just looking around and going, "What the fuck did I just hear?" And then we're like, "How do we try?" And we listened to just that fill over and over and try to transcribe it in our heads. And then finally, Jimmy goes, "I got it." And I remember he was sitting shotgun in the van, and he says, "Hit play again," and then he did it with his hands and feet, like on the dashboard. So we knew we were fans, We're like, okay, this guy's a fucking incredible drummer. He's got the chops. Let's see if he's down to do it.
Yeah, and I was honored. Honestly, I really was. Well, speaking of honor, I was honored to be asked because I really respected you guys as a band, and I really respected Jimmy as a drummer. And it's funny, I could hear a lot of my style in Jimmy's style already. So it was really strange to come in and like learn a lot of his fills, which already sounded a bit like my fills to begin with. So it was like the whole thing was like coming around a full circle in a strange kind of way. And I mean, for the most part, I just let you guys direct me when making the record, and it was I also really respected how much you actually like took me in, because you guys could have been dicks and kind of like kept me at arm's length, but no, you guys were really cool to me and kind of made me feel at home and made me feel part of the family.
I think it started with a mutual respect. I think that's what really kicked it off,
Yeah, I mean, it was. I get asked about that session and that album all the time, and I have to say it was like I'm kind of torn because on one hand it was like really sad and really emotional for you guys, and I could tell that you guys were hurting and missing your brother. And then on the other hand, here I am, like in there, and I don't want to overstep my boundaries. So, but on the other hand, I really enjoyed working with you guys. I really loved your camaraderie and the brotherhood that you guys had. So, it was kind of a bittersweet thing for me. On one hand, it was really sad. On the other hand, it was a great experience that I have fond memories of.
And that actually takes me to the next part. You're at the end of the sessions. I remember your parts were done, the drums were already laid down, and then we're starting to do our next thing. And you were like, I know you guys aren't thinking about touring right now, but if you ever do get out there, you just want to play a couple of shows, I can make myself available to you, and I'd love the chance to play some of this stuff live with you. And we were like, oh, I mean, that's a cool idea, but again, at that time, touring was not in our thought. We were like, we're just getting out this last piece of music of Jimmy's, and we don't know what we're doing next,
Right.
But then eventually we did decide to tour, as everyone knows now, and you came out with us. And I guess I'll just ask right off the bat, do you have any like stories? I mean, you've been on tour for years at this point with Dream Theater and everything like that, and then all of a sudden you're in with these young punks out on the road,
Well, first thing I had to do was start getting in shape to keep up with you guys. So you guys
I remember that you wanted to go shirtless again. You hadn't gotten shirtless in years.
That was the goal because I hadn't played shirtless in years, and I remember the goal was I started working out with you guys and eating with you guys, like dieting with you guys, and I ended up losing like 30 pounds. And the goal was by the time we get to LA, the LA show towards the end of that run, I had to be able to play shirtless. And sure enough, I was, and I played shirtless at that show. And
you were pretty jacked there for a minute, man. I saw we could see some abs going on there, man.
I know, it was crazy, man. I was in the best shape of my life. I was like, I guess you guys were in your late 20s, and I was in my early 40s. So I think I'm about 15 years older than you guys. So I was, I had to keep up with you guys. I didn't want to look like the fat old man. You guys whipped me into shape, and I appreciated it. I actually ended up having a lot of fun, like, doing all that. But yeah, I have so many great memories of that tour. Doing the whole Uproar tour with you guys and Disturbed and Stone Sour and Hell Yeah. I mean, it was a great run. But I do remember, not to harp on the passings of Jimmy, but like that was your first time without him. And Hell Yeah was out there with Vinny without Dimebag, and Corey was out there with Stone Sour for the first time since Paul had passed.
Yeah, so we were all out there.
There was a lot of camaraderie and similar situations with all you guys kind of dealing with that. But anyway, the shows themselves were great. I absolutely loved playing with you guys. And, as we were talking about earlier, my music taste is so broad that, after playing such technical stuff with Dream Theater for so many years and years and years, it was great to just get up there and fucking, have a good time and just play metal tunes or, however you would describe what you guys do. It was a nice change.
I let them describe it.
Yeah. So, yeah, for me, musically, it was a lot of fun just to do something different. And I don't know if I have any specific stories. I remember.
Well, let me jog your memory on a couple of them here. Then, so I'll start with the very first show we played with you.
In Canada.
In Montreal, Heavy Montreal. And we, at this point, now we do get massages, but none of us were out there getting massages. This was something that you brought in from your Dream Theater days. And we're all in the camper getting ready, you know, warming up and whatever. And we look outside, and you're out there getting a massage, and we got like 10 minutes to get on stage.
I don't even remember that.
Dude, it happened. We looked at our manager. Larry was out because it was our first show, and you know we're all nerves. You know, we're never nervous for going out on stage. This is the first time we're ever going to go out without Jimmy. And you're out there getting a massage, and Larry's looking at us like, does he know there's only 10 minutes to fucking go to stage? And like,
that's the best time to get a massage, man. Totally. Roll straight onto the stage.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
The thing I remember from that show was afterwards going out with you guys, and all the wives and girlfriends were there. Actually, I don't know if any of you guys were married yet, but you were with all of your wives-to-be. Yeah. And they were all out there for that show. And I remember we went out to a strip club afterwards. And I remember
the strip clubs in Montreal are nice.
I remember going out with you guys and just being so nervous because being a sober guy, I kind of eliminated all that from my life. Yeah. And I remember going out with you guys that night and being like so scared, like, oh my God, am I going to slip? Am I going to slip? Oh my God. Marlene's like, I'm on the phone, Marlene. She's like, get the fuck out of there.
Yeah, what are you doing there? That's hilarious.
These guys are like, don't worry, all the girls are here. It's cool. They're just celebrating it's their first show, and they're just blowing off some steam. Yeah. But I remember actually.
And then there was many other strip clubs after that.
Yeah. But I remember getting Dan the Body's tattoo on me in the back of your bus.
Oh, that's right. When we had our tattoo artist out.
We went out to, I think we went for Indian food or something like that. And you guys, you challenged Dan to eat a chili pepper, this super chili pepper. And you guys offered him, I think, like $100 each or whatever if he would eat it. And sure enough, he eats it. He puts it down. It took him like 10 minutes to get it down. But then I was like, all right, I had to fucking double down. I was like, all right, if you eat a second one, I'll get a fucking tattoo of a chili pepper with your name on it. And sure enough, he did. He fucking ate it. So I had to get a tattoo of a chili pepper with Dan the Body's name on it, and had to get it at 3 a.m. in the back lounge of the bus.
Wasn't the bus moving?
Yeah, we were going. It was like going like 70 miles an hour. It's like something straight out of fucking Jackass that Steve-O would do or something like that. And sure enough,
that's fucking classic.
Yeah.
So another story that I'm always fond of, and it's developed a good relationship, is you actually introduced us to your good friend Chris Jericho when we were out doing a show in Florida. Because he's like your best friend at the time, right?
Yeah. Chris and I still to this day are like best buddies. But at the time, I guess you guys didn't know him yet, and I know he was a fan of you guys. He loved City of Evil and
we heard praise from him and stuff. We knew who he was, but we hadn't had the pleasure of actually meeting yet. So you cultivated that. We were out there, and we drove out before the show, and went over to his house, and he's got his nice house out on the lake, and sure enough, he's cooking up steaks for us and everything like that. Being super hospitable, really nice guy, as you know. And he's got jet skis out there on the lake, and we're all jet skiing, and everyone's having a good time. And then you, motherfucker, think it's a good idea to try and splash Matt while he's standing on the side of the fucking lake.
Yeah.
But didn't realize there's not brakes on a fucking jet ski.
Yeah, I had no idea. That was my first time ever on a jet ski. And I remember I was out on the lake on the jet ski, and I'm a fucking walking disaster area. I crash cars. I'm like, you can't put me.
You definitely are not made for a jet ski.
No, totally. And I remember being out there on the lake and thinking to myself, oh my God, this is fucking awesome. This is so much fun. Don't do anything stupid. I remember saying to myself, don't do anything stupid. And sure enough, I start coming back towards the house, and I see Matt on one of the jet skis right in front. And I had this idea that I would be able to come right up to him and kind of like step on the brakes and just like, spray him or something like that. I don't know what made me think I even knew how to
fucking brakes.
Well, I found that out because I was coming straight at him. I'm like, wait a second, where is the fucking brake on this thing? And sure enough, there isn't any. And I fucking smashed the jet skis. Luckily, fucking didn't hit Matt. I think.
No, Matt jumped out of the way. Luckily, luckily he's
God.
athletic enough. Because we had a show that night, too. He would have been legless at the fucking show.
Well, Jericho was joking that he could see the headlines already. Portnoy saves Avenged Sevenfold, but kills Singer.
Yeah.
And
I just couldn't believe that. Did you ever?
And I sucked.
That jet ski, you fucked it up. Did you ever pay him back for that?
he wouldn't let me. I begged him to let me buy him a new one, and he refused to let me buy him a new one, so he could hang this above my head for the rest of my life.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And he still does, yeah. But thank God I didn't hurt anybody, because that was fucking so stupid of me, man. I'm fucking so stupid.
Hey, it's fun. We can laugh about it now, you know?
Yeah, thank God. And then I remember that night, M. Shadow stopping the show at some point to call out Chris for being on his phone texting. I remember Chris was in front of house, and then there was one of the moments like in the show where we'd stop and you guys would get the circle pit going or whatever, and he was like, Jericho, put down your fucking phone. Like the whole time Jericho's out there texting, and we could see him, his every move.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're in front of the house, you're on display.
Yeah.
The other thing that I noticed that, your best friend, similar to you, has this whole fucking library of music. And I think that's where you guys like really fucking hit it off. Watching the two of you converse about music is something to behold.
We text every day, pretty much just bullshitting about, hey man, okay, what's your 5 favorite Beatles songs that George wrote? Or what's your 5 favorite Maiden songs that weren't on a live album? Whatever. We're just like fucking music nerds.
Totally.
Every day texting each other with stupid shit like that.
Well, that's fun though.
Yeah, for sure.
So ultimately, we end up parting ways after all this fun on tour and everything like that. We're having fun together. I'll tell it the way I recall it. As I recall, we had pretty much decided this was always going to be an interim kind of thing for you to come into Avenged Sevenfold,
right.
and at a certain point near the end there, I think we were at the end of an American tour, about to go over to Europe. You mentioned that you were thinking of leaving Dream Theater.
Right.
And we were like, oh, okay. Not thinking much of it. And then you were like, oh, but, then you guys could have me for all time. And we're like, okay, let's wrap our head around this.
Right.
And, we wanted to make sure that, like, if you leave, it's not a guaranteed thing that you're going to be with us for all time,
Right.
And also, we were like, we don't also want to look like the dicks that fucking split up Dream Theater,
Right. I get it.
So that was kind of our thought process, and we were like, we were still in our heads going, well, this thing's going to end here, and we're going to have to move on, But why don't you tell it from your perspective, how you were feeling, why the departure from Dream Theater,
Right. I think I look at it like, I think we were both what each other needed at that time. I think you guys needed to get back on your feet.
Absolutely. And we couldn't have done it without you, obviously. You coming out and doing that, we wouldn't be still doing what we're doing right now without you.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad it worked out, because, the world needs you guys. But that's the way I felt like I was there to help you guys, and you guys were, whether you knew it or not, you were there at a good time for me too, because I was at 25 years into Dream Theater at that point, and I was fried and I was burnt, and I just needed a break. And touring with you guys was very refreshing for me, and it showed me, that there's more out there than just the little Dream Theater bubble that I had been in for 25 years. Mm-hmm. So you guys were really good for me at that point as well. You kind of opened up my eyes to other things, and I pretty much made the decision that I needed a break from those guys. I needed to be able to explore other things, whether it be with you guys or if it was, not with you guys, with something else.
Yeah.
And I knew that. I knew that it wouldn't necessarily work out between you guys and me, because I didn't know if you were ready to make a commitment. And, and I knew that the whole Dream Theater thing sparked up so much drama at the time with all the blabbermouth headlines. Anytime I did an interview, it became like fucking headlines.
It was everything.
It was horrible, and believe me, I never wanted that, and I'm sure for you guys that became a huge distraction. I've always been a social media guy, so that's always just the way I've been, and I know you guys are a little bit more, you keep that shit.
Well, yeah, and until very recently, I didn't have any social media until I was going to start doing this show, and I was like, well, I guess I got to get it.
But back then, you guys weren't, so. I could tell the way it was going down that it was just like you guys wanted to stay focused on Jimmy's legacy and whatever you were going to do next.
Yeah, exactly.
And I get the fact that the timing wasn't right. But for me, it didn't matter. If it wasn't going to be with you guys, I needed to do other things with other people. That was just what I needed in my life and my career. And Dream Theater was on my back to make commitments to a timetable, and because they wanted to go on, and I just wasn't ready to make those commitments. So anyway, what happened, and at that point, I finished out the year with you guys, and then at that point, you guys moved on, and I went on to do what I've been doing ever since. Now it's been over 9 years, and I've got like, I don't know, dozens of different bands and projects. I've put out literally 40 albums since that time.
Jesus.
Yeah. So I mean, like, if you look at,
we're
like,
fucking slackers over here. I think I don't even think we've put out like fucking 3 records. Everyone's still asking for the next record right now. You are putting out fucking 40. Jesus.
But even Dream Theater, and I'm not saying this to slack them, but even they have only put out 4 albums since I've been gone. And like, I think I just needed more than that. I needed to be able to play with Metal Allegiance and Flying Colors. Yeah, and then I went and played with Twisted after you guys, after they had a similar situation with AJ passing. So after the experience I had with you guys, walking in with Twisted was a very similar thing as well. Those guys were still hurting, and they wanted to honor his legacy. So I knew how to handle that, and I also did gigs with Stone Sour and all these other bands, Metal Allegiance, and all the bands I put together, Winery Dogs, Sons of Apollo, Flying Colors, so it's been an incredible ride, and I wouldn't have changed a thing. I have this tattoo here that says no regrets, and everything happens for a reason, and whether or not it worked out with you guys and whether or not it worked out with the Dream Theater situation, everything happens for a reason, and I couldn't be happier with the path I've been on since that experience with you guys. Yeah. And I'm grateful for the experience I had with you guys, but I'm also grateful for, the way it worked out, that you guys went on to do your thing, and you've played with 2 great drummers now, and Brooks is amazing. He's perfect for you guys. And I've gone on to do all the different things I do. So, I think everybody's happy.
Everyone's happy. Absolutely. Yeah, it was, I remember it being a little dicey for us there for a second at the end, there was the day when you mentioned you're like, hey, if you guys want, I'd love to stay on here. And we're like, okay, well, let's think about this. And then the next day, I believe the next morning, you were like, hey, I quit Dream Theater. We're like, what?
But I was going to do what I was going to do.
Yeah, you were going to do it either way. But on our end, we were like, whoa, we're going to look like the assholes that split up Dream Theater.
Right. I get it. I do. It was just, it's tough times.
Yeah. But again, you helped us out. We had a lot of great times on that fucking tour, that cycle.
Absolutely.
That was a real blast for us. We finished up in England, as you know. I think was like our last. We were doing those. You remember what the name of that club was? It was a club. It was a smaller club, and we did it multiple nights.
The Hammersmith Apollo. It used to be the Hammersmith Odeon, but now it's the Apollo. We did 2 nights there for Halloween, I think it was.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, because we dressed up. And it's funny. See, again, this is you're sober, so you remember all this shit. I don't remember what the fuck the name of it was.
Yeah, I remember. I remember every gig. I remember going to the USO with you guys.
Oh yeah, that was a great time. Stuff. Yeah,
that was unbelievable. To this day, still one of the coolest career highlights I've had. That was an amazing experience.
You and I were bunking up in Saddam Hussein's palace there.
Yeah, crazy. Like in his palace, and some of the shit we saw was insane, man.
Oh yeah.
Experience.
Yeah, I mean, when you're going around, walking around in there, and you're and you see it. You actually had a classic line when we were out there, one of the places had been bombed out, and you're like, "Who did this?" And I'm like, "We did, motherfucker." That's why we're out here. That was a classic line, but no, that was a great experience for me too, man. I mean, we didn't sleep much, traveling. Yeah. Anyone who's done a USO tour or anything like that would know you don't know when you're going to take off to the next place because they can't give you schedules. It'd be dangerous and everything like that. So you're just on alert at all times, and then you go and you play for these awesome people, these soldiers. It's not about whether they should be there or not or anything like that. They're there, so let's go out there and do something cool for them. And they're just most gracious people. And then we would stay up, all night with them, signing and chatting and everything like that, taking pictures. And it was just a really cool experience for all of us, I think.
And it's the only time you're ever going to hear an announcement before the show. Please remove your guns before entering the mosh pit.
I hope that's the only time they have to make that announcement.
don't hear that often at a gig.
Yeah. Well, speaking of weird shit that happened out there too, is actually on our way back, our flight into L.A. You weren't on this flight actually, because we parted and dropped you off in New York. But on the way back from L.A., we have been on this long trip and everything like that, where we just ready to unwind. And I remember the plane went out over the ocean, and we're like, wait a minute, that's a little weird. Why are we going so far out in the ocean? The airport's back this way. And then and they came up, and then as we're landing, we see all these fire trucks and ambulances ready, because something went wrong with our brakes up in the sky. And we were about to drop down, and like they didn't know if we were going to make it.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, that was a wild ride. Oh, yeah. That was actually when you cut your beard. Do you remember with the cigar cutter?
That's right. I think I cut it at the end of that run.
Yeah, at the end of that run, you had Jason Berry take a cigar cutter. And and trim it right there in the airport.
Did Jason keep it? Did I give it to him? I think he might have kept it.
He probably does. I'll have to ask him. But yeah, I think he might have that.
That's great.
we got that on video too. Oh, dude, Jason's doing great. He's actually out with Disturbed right now.
Really? Right on, man.
So I think that'll just about do it.
Yeah.
But I want to give you a chance to let the listeners at home know where can we find more of Mike Portnoy. I mean, you mentioned all the bands that you're in right now, so there's a lot to take in right there. So they're not all going to get it over this listen right now. So where can they go to find Winery Dogs and all these awesome projects that you got going?
Just my social media, Mike Portnoy. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I'm all over social media every day. I mean, the stuff I got going now, I have a new album with Flying Colors, which is my band with Steve Morse.
What's that? What's that project like?
That's like more like poppy alternative. It's kind of like Muse and Radiohead meets, the Beatles and Yes,
Okay, that sounds cool.
Yeah, and then I got Sons of Apollo, which is my band with Billy Sheehan and Bumblefoot and Derek Sherinian and Jeff Scott Soto, and that's more like in the vein of like Van Halen and Deep Purple and Rainbow, Rush. Cool. So we have a new album coming out in January with that, and then also what else do I have? I have the Winery Dogs with my band with Richie Kotzen and Billy Sheehan. I'm just finishing up a new album with Transatlantic, which is my prog band, doing like 50-minute songs and shit like that. So
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of everything. And, I still do Metal Allegiance, which is my thing where I get to jam and hang out with all my thrash buddies, the guys from Testament and Megadeth and Anthrax and Slayer and all those guys. So
yeah, that's cool.
I get to have fun in all these different playgrounds and do all these different things. It's awesome.
That's cool. So everyone go check out Mike Portnoy on all your social medias, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff. I guess that'll just about do it, man. Thanks for doing the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm glad I could break your Skype cherry. I'm bummed I couldn't be there to hang in person, but next time through we'll hook up for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We'll have to make we'll make another episode of this. There's a lot we could still get into for sure. That'll wrap up this episode of Drinks with Johnny. Thanks for listening, and please hit the subscribe button, write a review, give us a rating. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to run over to drinkswithjohnny.com for all things Drinks with Johnny. We got some merch over there, so go grab a glass, grab a shirt, support the show. Sign up with your email on the site to get news on upcoming shows and more, as I'm going to release new items soon on the site. So be on the lookout for that. And on the next episode of Drinks with Johnny, famed for his White Claw video on YouTube, comedian Trevor Wallace stops by. So don't miss that one. It's going to be a lot of fun. And as always, till next time, cheers.